Hi guys, welcome back to Bearded Heretics YouTube. I don't normally, well, this is a bit of a different video. And as I've stated before, I don't do drama, don't do online drama. That's not what I'm about. But this isn't really drama, I don't think, because this is about how an organization treats people. So just for some context, there's been some things going on. I haven't really been following it massively, just kind of like passively within the Atheist Community of Austin. And Notes from Autumn, who is was part of the Atheist Community of Austin, used to do videos on the line and other shows that they had. The Hang Up has kind of come out and said a few things. This is her like kind of recent video where she's kind of captured some of the issues that she's concerned about. Um, they've scrubbed her from their entire channel basically, so you can't find a video of Notes from Autumn on any of their channels. And yeah, it seems to be a bit like they're kind of trying to separate themselves away from her. I need my coffee for this one because it's a bit of a weird one for me. And I guess I just wanted to go through this video and just see what my thoughts were, because I have obviously made a video which I'll link at the end of this in the end card, about the problems I have with the online atheist community. And the Atheist Community of Austin was one of the things that I brought up in that discussion about how what their perspectives on atheism are and how they kind of respond to critics and the kind of atheism that they're promoting. So let's get into it. This video is about Capturing Christianity and the ACA as both non-profits. I'm going to be honest, I've only ever seen Capturing Christianity videos a few times, and it's usually with Drew from from GM Skeptic and Steve from Rationality Rules. So I haven't really paid much attention to Capturing Christianity. The only thing I saw recently was when he had a friend that died, and then he was immediately asking for donations, which was a bit dodgy. But yeah, that's the only thing I know about Capturing Christianity. So let's get into the video and see what Notes from Autumn has to say about this.
Atheist Community of Austin. The Atheist Community of Austin is also a 501c3 nonprofit, and it was founded in December 1996. Before its founding, it was an informal atheist group started by a woman named Kellen von Hauser, who initiated by emailing local atheists in the Austin area. By June 1997, the ACA had its own website, a relatively new medium at the time, to reach out to fellow atheists on the internet. The first episode of The Atheist Experience, a pre-recorded pilot, aired on October 19th, 1997. From the second show onward, the episodes were broadcast live on cable access television on every other Sunday, giving the opportunity for viewers to call into the show live. Since then, more shows have been produced by the ACA on YouTube, and they have begun collaborating with both large and small YouTube creators and recently onboarding them as regular volunteers. Mission statement. The Atheist.
So yeah, that was a good, nice, interesting history of the ACA, I guess. You know, it started with noble intentions. Quite interesting. I always find it interesting hearing how things started. You know, this is their purpose, and I watched this video earlier on, and I read this, and I think there's a question about whether they are fulfilling this purpose with their online shows, right? So I think Autumn actually talks about it.
This Community of Austin is organized as a non-profit educational corporation to develop and support atheist community, to provide opportunities for socializing and friendship.
Now, I know they have a Discord, but I think that's fan-run, and I don't know how else they kind of provide opportunities for socializing and friendship other than like the live chat of their shows. I know that in Austin they have meetups and stuff, but you know, obviously that's I guess if they're doing that, they're fulfilling their mission statement, but they're wider than just Austin these days.
To promote atheist viewpoints, to encourage positive atheist culture.
Now that's the bit that I have a bit of contention with. To encourage positive atheist culture. I don't think they do that very well. I think that they are... and the reason I say that, I think that they share a lot of concepts that are exclusive to them, and say that it's a generic atheist thought. I think that they take terms and transform them into other things to kind of like justify their position, such as the null hypothesis, and then they make people feel stupid for not understanding what that is, even though that they've changed it. And I guess by they make them feel stupid, there are specific characters within the ACA that do that, and I guess, you know, let's talk about the character that leads the whole thing, Matt Dillon. You know, I appreciated Matt Dillon for a long time. I thought he was very intelligent, very kind of understanding of what the purpose of his mission was and stuff. He was great. I thought he did really well in debates and stuff. But since I've kind of been more invested in the online atheist community, some of that stuff is starting to fall apart a little bit for me. He seems to be unnecessarily aggressive to people that want genuine answers, who don't necessarily understand atheism. He seems to be quite dogmatic in his approach to atheism, and dismissive of other people's approaches. He seems to be someone who's allowed their kind of fame to get the better of them. You know, he's an outspoken member of the community. He's done a lot of good for atheists, but I think he's allowed that to affect the way he reacts to people. And I was watching a video by someone called Brina. I can't remember the surname. But Brina was saying, you know, that it doesn't matter how much good you've done, that doesn't stop the bad stuff, you know, from being bad. And I agree with that. I think, you know, if you're going to treat people like crap, that just because you've donated a lot of money or you've helped a lot of people, that doesn't mean that you're not treating that other person like crap, you know? And I think that that's how I approach things. You know, you've got to treat people, you've got to treat everyone with the same respect that you'd treat anyone, you know? Otherwise, you're like good to some people and then an arsehole to other people, and that's what does it make you a role model? I don't know. It's a question.
To defend the First Amendment principle of separation of religion and government.
This is just a side, but this is really interesting for me because I live in the UK, and in the UK we have a state church, the Church of England. And the Church of England is the monarch, the Queen, is the head of the Church of England. And we actually have more separation between our church and the laws we produce than America does, even though they have it written into the Constitution that there needs to be a separation of church and state. It's literally the First Amendment. They wrote the Constitution, and the first thing they said that needs to be changed is actually we should separate church and state. And you cannot be a politician if you're not a Christian in America. There might be some examples, but there's certainly states where it's not allowed. And I'm pretty sure that a non-theist or anyone that's not a Christian, a non-Christian politician would never become president. So that's just really interesting. It's just a bit ironic that we actually have a state church and we have a better separation of church and state.
To oppose discrimination against atheists, and to work with other organizations in pursuit of common goals. How are they accomplishing this? Develop and support atheist community. Before the pandemic,
So this, just to quickly go, this video was a bit different from what I expected it to be. I expected there to be some level of discussion around the behavior of some of the people that work for the ACA. And it's not. It's more about the business, which I think is really good, because the business is the key, right? The business is the important part. If you're just talking about the behavior of the individuals, it might come across as drama, but this is how the organization is run. And I think that what Autumn is saying is very on point in terms of what you'd want to see from a non-profit organization that's trying to help atheists, compared to what we actually have got with the ACA.
The ACA would usually host in-person events, especially on Sunday, at the house where they ran their studios.
Yeah, they'd go and get meals. That was always on
Since
their
the ACA is now pretty
atheist
much
experience.
entirely virtual, the community is kept in a fan-run Discord and across online platforms. One question I have about the ACA is, are they a facilitating online community, or are they taking from it? I believe they do.
Taking from it. And the reason I say that is because there's not much other than the Discord, which I didn't even really know about until I watched this video, where people can come together and discuss these things. They don't facilitate community. They don't bring people together. The only places where you have that are the online call-in shows. They don't have I've never seen them promote any kind of hangouts or anything like that, other than their own personal ones. So Matt Dillon, he has a Twitch, and he'll be like, "Come hang out with me on my Twitch," and that's different to an ACA hangout, Whereas before, there would have been buildings that people could go to. They'd go have a meal, they'd grab dinner together, they'd have discussions and stuff that wouldn't be related to atheism all the time. And the problem is that, so my view, the reason I came onto YouTube to represent atheism, or to try and talk about atheism or whatever, is because I see that there's things that religion provides that when you become an atheist is lost, right? And that's community, that's security, that's purpose, and like some sort of comfort around traumatic events like death. Now, in my opinion, that's what should be replicated in a community of atheists in order to help people cope with those things, right? You'd want community around you and like-minded people. Now, the pushback on this argument is that atheism only tells you about one thing, one aspect of someone's life. It doesn't tell you about the politics, it doesn't tell you about their anything else. And I kind of get that, I agree with that, but it's a big part of people's lives. People define themselves by their atheism. I'm one of those people, I find that I can define myself as an atheist because it's a big aspect of my life, and I want to find like-minded people so that if they become traumatized, or if I become traumatized or anything like that, I know that I can go to those people and I'm going to get the answers that I need. So I'm not going to get, oh, they're in a better place, or I'm not going to get they're looking down on you, or they'll always be with you, or you'll meet them after you die, which is what I've gotten in the past. Yeah. I want a community of people who understand where I'm coming from with my belief or non-belief, however you want to phrase it, to God, right? About God. Yeah. And that is, I don't understand why people push back on that so much, because yeah, you can have different politics. I have friends that I game with, and that's the only thing that I have a link with. But there's a community of gamers that I hang out with online that I've met, and we have nothing else in common other than we play a video game. It's possible. It doesn't matter if that's the only thing, right? You can still find comfort in that community. You can still find people that are going to help you in that community. And it doesn't need to be one community. It can be different communities, and they can all exist simultaneously. You can have the leftist atheists. You can have the more conservative atheists. That's fine. Yeah. You can have the atheists that think that you should live as though God does exist, like Jordan Peterson says, whatever. You can have those things. So yeah, and that's the reason that I came on, is to try and kind of fulfill those niches in my life that religion leaves out. Now, luckily, I live in quite a secular country, so those niches are pretty shallow, but they're still there, and especially around kind of like bereavement. That's quite an important one for me. So when I hear like that, all of these shows are going on, and it's kind of like that's it. It's just the shows, and then there's no space elsewhere to have these conversations that are a bit more personal and a bit more kind of like how people like influence people's lives in that way. I find it a little bit disappointing, and I think this is what Autumn touches on here, is like that they're not facilitating the community, they're taking from the community. Yeah. So that's just my understanding of that, I think. So.
Provide opportunities for socializing and friendship, but I wonder if a lot of the focus on building community has been overshadowed by what is good for views or the whims of some influential creators.
Let's get views, make money for this non-profit. Yeah. Let's do the dramatic thing. Let's get as many views as possible. Let's shit talk Christians in order to kind of get as many views as possible, and it's fine as long as it's not a non-profit. Like, if you're a non-profit, then the idea is that you're trying to provide a service for people. Could I call the atheist experience or Talk Heathen or any of that a service? No, I wouldn't call it that. So yeah, I would call it a show. It's a show, but should it be a non-profit? Probably not. It should probably just be a YouTube channel.
I believe the ACA should act as a charity and not as a YouTube content mill. Promote atheist.
Yes. Yeah, you shouldn't just make continuous shows, make as many shows as you can to get as many views as you can to make as much money. Then that's not what it's about. Yeah.
They promote some atheist viewpoints, not all of them.
This is the thing, right? So there's a big divide at the moment. I called it the Atheist Civil War in a tweet, Twitter DM that I'm in a group chat, and it's between these like philosophical atheists, like answers and reason, and then the lack of belief atheists, right? And it's just ongoing, right? But I do not see representation at all from in fact, I see denial of its existence about the kind of more philosophical approach to atheism, and I've been convinced by the philosophical approach. I think it's a better approach in my opinion, but I don't mind other people using the lack of belief definition. That's fine, but it's not represented by the ACA at all. In fact, what you get people asserting that the only thing that atheism is a lack of belief in God. And I was watching a video with Matt Dillon, where he talks about atheism, and he says that agnostics and agnostics and ichtheists are all atheists, whether they like to be called it or not. No, they're whatever they want to be called. If an agnostic is a better term for them to describe their beliefs, then they should be able to use that. Atheist describes my beliefs better. Atheist might describe somebody who would be categorized as an agnostic better. But like, if we're going to use colloquial terms, let people use whatever colloquial term suits them to describe their belief, right? Don't enforce it upon people that your definition of atheism is the one that they have to use. They are atheists, but they're agnostic atheists. And that doesn't even make any sense, because if atheism is a lack of belief in a god, then how can you have an agnostic atheist? Because then that would be someone not knowing that they lack a belief in God. And a Gnostic atheist would be someone knowing that they lack a belief in God. Because it's not them knowing that God doesn't exist. Because that would be atheism as the belief that God doesn't exist. Sorry, that's a bit of a rant, but this is the thing. Like, you get all these different views about what atheism is and what it means. And the only person I've seen who presents a different view about what atheism is Shannon Q. That's it. And it's just because she says, I believe God doesn't exist outright. You know, and I've seen Matt Dillahunty say that, but he doesn't like to. He doesn't like to say it, and he specifically says he doesn't like to say it because then he has a burden of proof. So it's avoiding the burden of proof in that situation, and it just, you know, it's just it feels like politics at that point rather than actually like helping someone to describe how they're feeling about a certain subject, about a big subject in their lives, especially if they're coming from a religious background.
I don't believe the diversity in perspective from various atheists is always celebrated by being read charitably, discussed honestly, or engaged with in good faith. I can think of many public and private examples of atheists being shot down without a fair fight, even if they were in the right, because of someone with more power. I am not going to go into specifics, but rather I ask that we reflect on this more moving forward.
Would you not rather have a larger atheist community with a varying range, a diverse range of opinions about what atheism is and what it should be and how people experience it, than a blinkered view that only really encapsulates a small group of people? Because this strict border, it's a really odd thing because you're putting a strict border around what atheism is. You're saying this is what atheism is, but then you're trying to make that border as big as possible to include people that don't call themselves atheists. And then when there are people that call themselves atheists, but they might be a little bit more sympathetic towards Christians or theist people and understanding of why they might believe, and not just saying that it's because it's like Santa Claus, you say that they're theist trolls. And I'm not saying that this is anyone from the ACA specifically, but this is the kind of rhetoric that the ACA's kind of definition around what atheism is and how they communicate that breeds. It has people being very, very strict with their view of what atheism is, and if you step out of line, you must not be an atheist. And it's really weird. It's really weird because it's a strict boundary that then is trying to be as broad as possible to include people that would not normally call themselves atheists. It's very odd.
Do you have questions for those who work with the ACA to ask themselves? Are volunteers being treated like volunteers?
I think what Autumn means is, are they being given roles that people who are paid? So what happens with volunteers tends to happen with volunteers, especially in companies like non-profits and that, is that they get given roles that somebody who is being paid also gets. So, you know, you might have a talk show host, for instance, who's being paid for that show, and then you get a volunteer who's not being paid for that show. A volunteer should be someone who can choose when they do their hours, can do as much work or as little work as possible, and isn't doing any job that anyone that is paid is also doing. That's what volunteers should be. They shouldn't be doing any work that someone else who is being paid is also doing.
Are members putting the mission of the organization first? Are atheists being valued as individuals equally regardless of social identity? Defend the First Amendment principle of separation of religion and government. These issues are mostly talked about on their smallest show, The Nonprofits, but I would like to see more calls to action and goals being set for atheists to move in a positive direction. Oppose discrimination of atheists. Other than standing against bigotry from people who call into their shows, how are they doing this? If the ACA has great examples of how they're accomplishing their mission statement, a monthly recap on their shows or on their social media pages would be beneficial.
What they are doing is actually, I think, influencing discrimination against atheists sometimes, because there is this view that atheists are arrogant, ignorant, and have bad arguments, and they are platforming some of those people, platforming some of those arguments, like the Santa argument, which is not a good argument, and they're making those arguments okay. And it's kind of like, I've seen some bad arguments on ACA shows that seem to be just taken and gone, yeah, this is fine, you know, when actually we should be thinking about this more complexly. We should be thinking about it more in a more nuanced way.
With other organizations, they work with Recovering from Religion, which offers peer support and resources to those who are leaving a religion or cult, as well as Black non-believers and local nonprofits to build ramps, host blood drives, and adopt areas to keep Austin beautiful. Finances. First, I want to note that a complete breakdown of the tax records from over the ACA's lifetime are linked below, as well as notes in a separate link from the person who helped me with the information layout. Please read the tax breakdown and the notes because I believe they are one of the most important pieces of information I am bringing to your attention.
I'm just going to read the notes. If it ever loads. We're getting there, guys. It's fine. This is a lot. Okay. I don't really care. Oh, so I've donated thousands of dollars, made hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for the organization over the past 16 years. But we also started with over $1 million from 2 billionaire donors. So we're actually not sitting on much money that we didn't have to begin with beyond the building.
There seems to be a discrepancy between
the
claims of ACA board member Matt Dillon and the tax records. The Atheist Community of Austin accrues plenty of money across their many YouTube channels, Patreon, merch stores, weekly charity drives, in the live chats, and from private donations. Supporters of the ACA should be asking for transparency on how the funds are spent and expect the funding to be in line with the organization's mission statement. Just as we want to hold religious communities accountable, we should also hold our own communities accountable. The ACA relies almost entirely on volunteer work with the exception of very few employees. The main hosts for the shows are not compensated. Both hosts and guest hosts are given a reasonable meal via a food delivery app on the day of their appearance on an ACA show. However,
wait. So this is really important actually, because if none of the people who are doing shows are compensated other than getting a reasonable meal, what is the rest of the money used for? Now, it said they had a few employees. But if it's only very few employees, then, you know, your costs are down. And it's a non-profit, so it shouldn't be making any money. So they have to be using that money. So that would be really interesting. And I think that Autumn's right. You know, if there's only a few employees, then we should be knowing how the money's being spent. If you're putting money into a charity, you want to know how the money's spent, and into a non-profit. And I think that it is a sign of a good non-profit if they're really transparent about what they spend their money on. You know, and they might be spending it on like lobbying governments or people or stuff like that. You know, they might be doing that, but that's the kind of thing you'd want to hear about as well. You'd want to hear about, like, you know, we lobbied the government to prevent this from happening, or this religious thing. You know, we lobbied the government to make sure that you know, creationism wasn't taught in this school or whatever. You know, there's various things that you can do, but like, you'd want to know about what they're up to.
However, given that hosts share their intellectual property, promote the shows, and are the reason most people are incentivized to support the ACA, I am suggesting a $100 stipend for each show that a regular host works, along with the meal compensation that the guest hosts get. I also suggest that all volunteers receive reimbursement for their expenses, such as gas money or other things that are required to accomplish.
If that doesn't happen, that should absolutely be happening. Like, anyone that spends money fulfilling the needs of an organization should have that money reimbursed.
Their work. These suggestions are beyond reasonable considering what those in both on and off-screen media are normally paid. Any equipment given to creators should be a gift to support their efforts and not loaned. And the ACA should keep elevating atheist voices as a priority over the company's own YouTube channel growth.
I think the thing with the gifting equipment is that somebody might come in and there'd have to be like a contract around that, I think, in that, like, you have to stay with the company for a certain amount of time. You can't, if somebody comes in and then just gets the equipment that they need for their own show for free from the ACA, they can then just take it away and leave at that point, and then that's it. So I do think that there needs to be some sort of, like, maybe if you've done a certain amount of videos for the ACA using that equipment, then you can have it permanently after that. But if you aim to leave within a certain amount of time, then you need to give it back. I think that's reasonable, because I can imagine there's a lot of that people would abuse that system.
Maybe the whims of some entitled individuals. I think it's good to keep in mind that you can also support individual creators with their personal content or on their personal Patreon pages. A nonprofit needs...
Well, this is a bit of an issue with conglomerations anyway. You know, you get a group of people and they just start adopting all these channels into their own thing. And then they get all the donations, and the people who are actually doing the part, who would normally be getting the money themselves, are kind of left in the wayside.
Funds in order to accomplish the mission, but using funds to help the community is very different from using the community to help the funds. And I want to be sure that the community is what's being prioritized. The ACA board members as of 2020 are listed on their website as follows. Members of the ACA should make sure that there is little bias on the board, and those who are in positions of leadership are diverse, responsible, and ethical. I hope that you guys can see that So
this is the ethical thing, I think, is very important, and I think there seems to be a lot going on about Matt Dillon and Jimmy Snow currently, and I don't know the full details. I know that it started out with an issue with Gabby Hanna, and it's kind of escalated from there, and then there's lots of people coming out and saying that Jimmy's been inappropriate, and then he's released an apology video which he's then deleted, and I think Matt has been backing him to a certain extent. I don't know what's going on there. I don't want to be bothered with the drama stuff. I don't even think that's drama, because if somebody is acting inappropriately with people, like making sexual advances towards potential fans and stuff, it's inappropriate and it shouldn't be done. And if he's part of a non-profit organization, if he's representing a company in that moment, in that discussion, then he should be held accountable. If I started in my work, if I started making sexual advances to potential clients, I would be fired immediately. You know, so it's one of those things. You know, he needs to be held to account. Is his behavior acceptable? Is it appropriate? And is it professional? And if it isn't, then he needs to be held to account. And that's not drama. And I think the stuff with Gabby Hanna, I think that might have been more drama, because that was about a book review thing, and I don't know what happened there. But the stuff that's come out following that is actual issues that need to be addressed within the organisation of the ACA, if it's what's happening. Yeah. He can't be making sexual advances to fans, because they are clients at the end of the day. Yeah, that's what they are. He is providing a product, and they are clients buying the product. And you know, if he's using his Patreon as a way of getting laid, then that's not okay. Yeah. Um. So yeah, but I don't really know what's going on there, other than what I've heard. I've watched Brina's a bit of Brina's stuff. I've watched some of Cheshire's stuff, Cheshire Vic. It's all very good stuff, but it's just it's trying to find out where it starts, because they're kind of already on the journey, and there's been lots of videos that have come out, and all these videos are kind of like halfway through that journey, so it's difficult to know exactly what's going on. But I think that um, then if the ACA doesn't have a code of ethics for its volunteers or for its staff, then it needs to produce some. It needs to have some policy around inappropriate behavior towards clients, and that's how they should be thinking about the people watching. Yeah, and that goes for the calling shows as well. When someone calls in, they're a client. You know, they're paying, even if it's just with the ads. Um, Hanging up on them and being rude to them might get you more views, but it's not actually gonna be helpful. I think there's some concerns at the moment, it seems, within the online atheist community about how we treat, how we act, how we present ourselves, how we are perceived. Um, and I think that there's room for change here, but people need to start taking responsibility for their behavior, and they need to start addressing it and being honest about it and changing it. And that's going to be when it changes. And I want to see that happen, and that's the reason I'm making this video, is because I want to see the atheist community be the best it can be. And I think Autumn's right. I think whilst it's bad practice within a non-profit organization that's centered around atheism, and is probably the biggest atheist creator on the internet currently, is acting unethically, and isn't holding people to account, and isn't being responsive to people's criticisms and concerns, and actually is trying to distance themselves from people that are criticizing them, atheism is going to be in trouble, because they are representing atheism. You put in atheism into a YouTube thing, and it comes up with maybe GM Skeptic, maybe Rationality Rules, but definitely the atheist experience, and definitely Matt Dillahunty. So it's time for people to start taking responsibility and start owning up to things, and not shying away from it, and owning their mistakes, or the things that they've gotten wrong, and saying, you know what, actually this is bad, it was unethical, I'm going to change, that's it. Doesn't need to be this big thing. Doesn't need to reach this level, and it's something you don't need to scrub someone off your channel because of it. Craziness. Anyways, that's my rant over. Hope you've enjoyed, and look forward to seeing you again at some point, when I'm probably doing a video that's more like what I'm talking about, something to do with something else. Bye.